a live episode, and today I am back at you. It is the 4th of January 2023. Let me just tilt my glasses so you can't see that vile reflection. And we are back. We have quite a bit of royal news to talk about today. There wasn't any yesterday, so I didn't come on. But today there seems to be quite a bit. In fact, the main piece of news that I wanted to talk about today was actually to go through an article and dissect it. Now, this article came to my attention late last night. I was just preparing myself for bed. I was just getting my wee willy winky tea light to ascend the stairs. I had my nightcap on. I had my nightshirt. My smoking jacket was on. And I was just about to climb the stairway to heaven to ascend to the royal bedchamber. And an article popped up that basically it goes over Princess Diana's tragic accident. Now, this has been spoken about so much. And, I think most people are of the opinion, myself included, just let Diana rest. Enough is enough. And there have been conspiracy theories out there for many years. I am not a conspiracy theorist. I do not like conspiracy theories. Most of them, I think, are a complete load of twaddle. And, all the ones that have come up about Diana, I never really believe. So I would like to start this chat by saying that. But there was something came up last night relating to Prince Harry's latest book, Spare, that did pique my interest and really made me think for the first time that there could potentially be a possibility that something else happened. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about that the palace has actually kind of hit out, not directly, not in a formal statement, but through kind of through sources, through palace sources, and we hear quite a lot about all of these palace sources. So they've hit back at Harry's claims in the trailers for the interviews that are coming up by saying that the royal family didn't want to reconcile with him and that Prince Harry had tried. Well, the palace is now saying that's not true. We'll get into that. And also there's just a little bit of extra news as well. So hello and welcome to everybody just joining in. But yes, I am going to read an article that came up to my attention. So it's an article, it's fairly lengthy, so I'm going to read through it. It's by a journalist, Sue Reed. She has been a journalist for a very long time, so she is one of the more trusted senior journalists out there. She certainly, doesn't need to make things up. She's had a very long-standing career, which again is another reason why I give this interview a little bit more, emphasis than other claims coming up. So please bear that in mind. Also, please bear in mind that the official inquest is still the official inquest. The official inquest into Diana's car accident did claim that the driver, Henry Paul, was responsible for the crash because he was intoxicated. That is the official line. That has not changed. This is just something extra. So let's be responsible and dissect it. So Sue Reed says, so why did researchers for Harry's new memoir, of course Spare, quiz me about Diana's death crash? After years of forensic investigation, I have grave doubts about the official version of what happened in Paris. So yes, it's quite a punchy piece, and let's get into it. She says, her words, not mine. On the day Princess Diana was laid to rest in September 1997, her 12-year-old son Harry, and of course, no mention of William, but William was there too. He did walk behind his mother's cortege as it travelled past the weeping crowds lining London streets. I remember watching it myself on TV. A quarter of a century later, the image of that young boy, it should be boys because William was there too, remains imprinted on the public's consciousness. And Prince Harry says he has never forgotten the traumatic experience. He says, before I knew it, I found myself with a suit on and a black tie. I was part of it. In another interview in 2017, I remember this interview as well, he spoke about My mother had just died, and I had to walk a long way behind her coffin, surrounded by thousands of people watching me, while millions more did on television. I was one of those people on television watching. I don't think any child should be asked to do what I did under any circumstances. I mean, just going back, I remember watching this on TV as it all played out, and I remember thinking, I'm sort of in the middle of William and Harry's ages, so I am smack bang in the middle. Um, and I remember thinking how brave they were at the time, and how hard and how difficult it must be. And I also wondered at the time, and my parents wondered as well, what the impact of losing Diana would be growing up, and how much more different their lives were going to be minus Diana. And of course, now we're seeing what they are like as adults, and we are seeing very much being played out on the royal stage now what the effects of losing their mother for both of them was. And I think both of them have handled their grief in very different ways. But I think both of them initially bottled up and kept everything inwards. And I think it is good to be expressing how you feel about it. That is good. So let's continue. It is a moment Harry is sure to revisit in his eagerly awaited ghost-written memoir due to be published next Tuesday. I'm sure it is, because depending on how far back Harry goes into his life, it probably will deal with his upbringing and then obviously continue through to the present day. Um, she continues, in title spare, a reference to the prince's secondary place in the royal pecking order, behind the heir, his brother William. It is expected to explore in details Harry's thoughts about his emotional role at Diana's funeral, and it appears much else. Reports in the press in recent days have suggested that Harry will examine key events leading up to the terrible night in August 1997, when his mother died with her boyfriend Dodi Al Fayed after a car crash in Paris. And she says, I have good reason to believe them. The world has always been told it was a tragic accident that occurred as the couple followed dinner at the Ritz Hotel, hurtled through Paris in a chauffeur-driven Mercedes to their secret love nest near the Champs Elysees. Yeah, I mean, going back to it again, I've read myself much of the inquest. Lots of reports on. I've just read lots of reports on this to make sure that I've been well informed over the years. And I do remember reading somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but I remember reading that it wasn't always the plan, and this is quite important to remember for later on in this article. It wasn't always the plan for them to leave the Ritz Hotel and go back to Dodi's apartment. It was initially the plan that they would stay at the Ritz Hotel in one of the rooms. Of course, it's a hotel, it has rooms. So that was the plan. It was only when all the paparazzi was kind of outside that, even one of them, I think it may have been Dodi, I can't quite remember, but one of them suggested going out of the back door, setting off a decoy car to distract the press and all those paparazzi, and to go back to the apartment where they might have more of a quiet, private, I suppose, experience. They just had dinner, so rather than going up to the room in the Ritz, they decided to deploy the decoy car and then obviously travel through that fatal tunnel. Um, but now this is crucial. So she says that the researchers for Harry's memoir have contacted many of those who remember or were otherwise connected to the crash in Paris. These included eyewitnesses, French police who attended the scene, journalists, including her, who have investigated in great detail how and why Diana came to pass. The official thesis, as I said before, that was rubber stamped by the French and Scotland Yard investigations, and later at a very high profile public inquest, is that the crash was a result of gross negligence by the Ritz's intoxicated chauffeur, Henri Paul, and that is still the official line, who was speeding to escape moped riding paparazzi, tailgating the Mercedes, trying to photograph the princess and her lover, of course, Dodi. Diana, she was the most famous most photographed woman in the world. And of course, Dodi was the son of Harrods owner Mohammed Al Fayed. Um, and one thing I didn't know from this article, actually, I had never heard that Prince Philip had dubbed Dodi an oily bedhopper, a comment which only added to the media frenzy. I don't remember that at the time, but apparently Philip called him an oily bedhopper, of course, in reference to the fact that Dodi was a bit of a Lothario. He was a bit of a Romeo, and we did see a little bit of that in the latest season 5 of The Crown. We saw him, with a girlfriend prior to meeting Diana. So we've no reason to believe that at least is not true. Of course, they had just had a holiday on the Al Fayed yacht. It was only later that same day that Diana was due to fly back to Britain to be reunited with William and Harry, who had been staying at Balmoral with Charles and the Queen. I'm just scanning down the article to not read the bits that we don't need. So what happened in the 2 minutes following the last photograph that is known to have been taken of Diana, she says, is central to the question that for many will remain unanswered. Millions of words have been written about the crash. And a French source involved in the original accident investigation has revealed that Prince Harry is intensely focused on getting more information about his mother's final hours. So this goes to show, I think, that Prince Harry is not satisfied with the official inquest. We don't know about William. As far as publicly, William has accepted the inquest. Privately, not so sure now, because it certainly seems that Harry has not accepted the official inquest. Apparently, there are plenty of people in France who recall the night. It's only normal that Diana's son should want to learn more about it for his book, the source told a British newspaper earlier this year. Now, this is where I kind of think, so, yes, it is normal for a son, any child, to want to know more about something that is so important to you as a person. So, yes, it is more than normal for Harry to want to know more and want to find out the truth. I am all for finding out the truth here on this channel. So I'm with Harry there. Where I'm not is that you do it for a book. That's the bit I'm not, if this is in the book, which of course we don't know officially that it is, but if it is, and we'll find out soon enough, then I don't think it's right to do it just for a book, especially one that you're earning, apparently £18 million advance, if rumours are to be believed. So yes, it's normal to want to find out, not particularly normal to do it just for a book. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, in a further revelation, Lee Sansom, a former military policeman and ex-bodyguard of the princess, so a well-placed person, has recalled how Diana talked to him about fears for her safety after the murder of Gianni Versace in 1997. Although the Italian was killed in a random attack, his death was initially suspected to have been a professional assassination. So we know that Diana had this on her mind. We also have reference to a note that Diana wrote, sort of speculating that that the establishment was out to get her in her car. So he says that Diana confided in me her own fears that she might one day be assassinated too. And that he said that for his biography, Protecting Diana. She said something like, "Do you think they'll do that to me?" She was shaking, and it was clear from her tone that she really thought they might, whoever they might be. And we know that Diana, of course, had been gaslit into doing the Panorama interview. So she did have thoughts in her head, whether or not they were based in truth. Again, we'll never completely. Maybe one day we will find out, but at the moment we don't know for sure. Sansom was sufficiently close to Diana that she gave him a nickname. She called him Rambo, after, of course, the Sylvester Stallone character. Sansom was on Dodi's protection staff and watched the couple's relationship develop over that summer. Tellingly, the ex-bodyguard outlined his own suspicions that something strange happened in the tunnel. He said, and this is where it starts to get really interesting, and this is the bit that really made me think for the first time. A witness driving a car that was travelling in front of the Mercedes in Paris told Diana's inquest he saw a high powered motorbike overtake the car just seconds before the crash. Another witness travelling in the opposite direction saw a second motorbike swerve to avoid smoke and the Mercedes wreckage, then carry on out of the tunnel without stopping. The bike's riders were never found, and he says that is no coincidence. So we have a witness. We have to take the witness statement at face value, although, it may not be true. People, what one possibility is that people do say things to get in the press. People do say things to sell things like books that might not be true. And of course, we have to bear this in mind. Since Diana's death, this is back to the article writer. She says, since Diana's death, I have investigated the crash and its aftermath in forensic detail. I have spoken to French and British intelligence officers and members of the SAS and friends of both the late princess and Dodi Fayed. One of my most haunting experiences was interviewing the parents of Henri Paul, who was 41 at the time. Within hours of Diana's passing, being described in French security service briefings to Paris newspapers as having been drunk as a pig at night. So we all know that the toxicology reports came back high alcohol content in his samples. The couple who live in Brittany told me, with tears in their eyes, that their son was not a heavy drinker. They said he enjoyed only an occasional bottle of beer or a Ricard, a licorice-flavoured aperitif. They added that during a meeting at the British Embassy in Paris with Scotland Yard in 2006, so many years later, they were assured that their son was not drunk. Now, this is the first time that I, at least, have heard that the parents were told, or they are saying that they were told officially, that their son was not drunk, which again leads to, if the toxicology reports say that he was drunk, why is somebody telling them that he wasn't drunk? Unless, of course, somebody's making something up or there is a conspiracy. This is where it gets interesting. So forensic reports presented to the inquest later showed that Henri Paul had 3 times the French limit at the time of alcohol in his samples. But curiously, the same samples also showed a high level of carbon monoxide. Now, again, this is the first time I'd heard there was also carbon monoxide in the samples. This is, of course, a deadly gas found in car exhaust fumes. Could the samples, as some conspiracy theorists suggest, have been swapped with those of a suicide victim? The judge at the inquest said this anomaly was impossible to unravel. So there we have one conspiracy. Were the samples swapped to cover something up? Now, again, we can't say yes, we can't say no, but it's interesting just to bear that in mind. Professor Atul Johnston, a British clinical pharmacologist, said at the inquest in open hearings that no explanation for the carbon monoxide concentrations had been found. So that actually happened. It was not a measuring glitch, said Johnston. The most likely possibility is that it isn't Henri Paul's sample. So this is what a professional professor said at the actual inquest. So that's not made up. Perhaps Prince Harry's memoir will help to unravel the mystery, as well as all the others surrounding his mother's passing. A passing which so many witnesses have suggested was not the tragic accident it claimed to be. The question many still ask is how could Henri Paul and the paparazzi following the car have been made scapegoats that night to cover up a more sinister plan by the British establishment to stop Diana's inappropriate romance? Now, of course, I have heard the conspiracy theories about that. Previously, I have dismissed them. My investigations have shown that paparazzi photographers who supposedly hounded Diana to her death were not even in the tunnel at the time of the crash. So she is saying her own investigations say that the paparazzi hadn't entered the tunnel before the crash. They were apparently, according to her, 1 full minute behind the Mercedes, travelling on mopeds that couldn't keep up with the powerful car. Several years later, 9 paparazzi were cleared of any charges after the French state prosecutor said there was insufficient evidence of their involvement in the crash. Like Diana's former bodyguard, Lee Sansom, she has also discovered that powerful black motorbikes, which did not belong to any photographers, were close to Diana's car when it crumpled against the 13th pillar of the tunnel. Now, I think this article has come out now because I think when she was contacted by Harry's researchers, I think she told all of this to Harry's researchers. And I think rather than wait for Harry to put it out in his book, I think she's put it out as an article, to under her own terms because she doesn't know, of course, how Harry's ghostwriter has written it into the book Spare. So I'm thinking, I'm almost 100% sure that this content will be in the book, which is why I think we've got the timing of it coming out now. She continues, compelling testimony seen can only be found in background interviews prepared for the princess's inquest. Some of this evidence was revealed in the inquest, some of it was never produced. Now, this sentence does give me, I suppose, a bit of a red flag on the whole thing, because how has she got access to evidence that was prepared for the inquest but wasn't released? Was it not sealed under lock and key? How has she got access to it? That bit remains a mystery to me, so keep that in mind. She says, but the hundreds of pages show that 14 independent witnesses near the scene remember the Mercedes suddenly being surrounded at the tunnel's entrance by the black motorbikes, as well as 2 cars, a dark saloon and a white turbo Fiat Uno. Now, we know a lot about the white turbo Fiat Uno because at the time, I remember they found white Fiat Uno paint samples on the front of the car, almost as if it had clipped the car. They never found that Fiat Uno, but then years later, I do believe I read stories that the owner of that Fiat Uno, who at the time was a teenage driver, I think he'd been out at a party that night and something along the lines of he didn't want to tell his dad he'd been out, and apparently he says that he accidentally, or the Mercedes clipped, or there was an impact, there was a collision between the 2 cars, and he said that it was him involved. He got back home and he and his father actually spray painted the Fiat Uno to avoid getting into trouble. Apparently, he fessed up to this years and years and years later. Apparently, there was a broken tail light as well that they fixed. Years and years and years later, he fessed up to police, and the police basically ushered it away. They quietened it down. So that was the claim made by this person. If you search it on Google, you'll find that that all there. So these all sped on into the darkness of the tunnel after the Mercedes. According to one witness who produced evidence for the inquest, we don't know what the evidence is, but apparently evidence, it could have just been a testimonial. These mysterious vehicles had travelled to the entrance of the tunnel via a nearby slip road and had been nowhere near the Ritz that night. And this is one thing that I suppose puzzles me, is that if it was an establishment hit job, how would they have known what the plans were that night? Because there were no plans to leave, and there certainly were no plans to have a decoy. So if it was an establishment hit job, if you like, then how did they know that that was actually going to happen? Unless, of course, they were just stalking and waiting for an opportunity. So piecing together all this information, she found that the saloon had tailgated the Mercedes, possibly just going quite fast at night time down the tunnel. Possibly the saloon was nothing even to do with any conspiracy. But it could have implicated, it could have made the chauffeur, perhaps wrongly thinking a paparazzi had caught up, drive even faster into the tunnel. That is a distinct possibility. Meanwhile, the Fiat Uno accelerated towards Diana's vehicle, clipping the metalwork and pushing it to one side. So we know this happened because they found the paint and they found fragments of a broken tail light. Um, the maneuver allegedly allowed one of the black motorbikes with two riders on board wearing helmets that hid their faces to speed past Diana's car. Witnesses at the inquest claim that when one rogue bike was about 15 feet in front of the Mercedes, a fierce flash of white light shone from it. Now, I had previously heard rumours of a flash of light. But this kind of goes into a bit more detail. Straight into the eyes of the Mercedes driver, Henri Paul. The suggestion is that this came from a laser beam carried by a pillion passenger and was directed with precision into Diana's car. The flash would have temporarily blinded any driver. It would have been followed by a loud bang as the limousine swerved before slamming into the pillar. One of the eyewitnesses, a French harbour pilot driving ahead of the Mercedes, which had no backup car, uh, claimed to have watched the awful scene in his rear view mirror. Chillingly, he recalled the black motorbike stopping after the crash and one of the riders jumping off before going to peer into the window of the Mercedes. The rider, who kept his helmet on, then reportedly turned to his companion, giving a gesture where both arms are crossed over the body and then thrown straight out at each side. And apparently that is used informally in the military to indicate mission accomplished. So there we go. There were, it has to be said, plenty who wanted to bring a swift end to Diana's relationship with Dodi. She had become, or considered to be, a loose cannon, according to some members of the British establishment. Others say she developed paranoia after breaking up with Charles and losing the protection of the royal family when her HRH title was removed. I partly agree with that sentence, partly don't. Of course, Diana famously did refuse protection. She was actually offered protection post leaving the royal family, something, of course, that hasn't been offered to Prince Harry. But I think, being seen as the mother of a future king, she was offered that protection. She actually turned that down. So I don't sort of I don't agree in part with that paragraph. So to add to the disquiet, the mother of the future king and head of the Church of England was threatening to move abroad with Dodi Al-Fayed, who was a Muslim. Dodi had bought an estate once owned by film star Julie Andrews in Malibu rather, and that of course was covered in The Crown, and had shown Diana a video of it. He told her the sumptuous residence was where they would spend their married life. Now, of course, we don't know 100% if that is true. But anyway, so ostracized by the royal family and stripped of her royal title, Diana was said to be excited by the prospect of escaping Britain for America. She had given her love, she'd given Dodi apparently a pair of cufflinks belonging to her late father. Significantly in London before meeting Dodi, after she split with Charles, Diana had told her lawyer that she expected efforts would be made to get rid of her. And of course, there's been a note revealed known as the Mishkan Note, written by the lawyer's staff. Diana said her death would be by some accident in a car, such as a pre-prepared brake failure, or at least to see that she was injured or damaged. Extraordinarily, since the princess's death, the article writer has been told by a well-placed source in our Foreign Intelligence Service, MI6, that this is not far from the truth of what really happened. So she's claiming that she has been told by an MI6 intelligence service officer, really well placed, that is not far off the truth. This astonishing claim is that a Paris operation was organized to frighten the princess into halting her romance because her lover was considered by the British establishment to be an unsuitable companion for the mother of a future king. We planned to break her arm. This is in quotes. We planned to break her arm or cause a minor injury, said the MI6 informant, now retired and living in Europe. No one in the security services overseeing this operation wanted Diana to be killed. Dodi, well, he was another matter, says the informant. Whether this account is true or not, there remain many unanswered questions that Harry may raise in his memoir about his mother's death from heart failure caused by her injuries in the Paris tunnel. Last August, she revealed um, that Diana's lawyer went to the London police headquarters to read that note personally to senior officers to stress the importance. It was then mysteriously put in a safe for 6 years rather than being handed to French police investigating how she passed. Neither Harry nor any of the princess's relatives knew of it for the best part of a decade, and that was very, very naughty. Of course, any evidence I feel should be looked at in the open. The note's existence was disclosed by Scotland Yard only after a letter, handwritten this time by Diana. This is the one that you can probably find on the internet if you Google search, voicing the same accident fears, came to light in 2003, just before the opening of the inquest. The second document had been kept by the princess's former butler, Paul Burrell. In a Channel 4 documentary investigating the crash for the 25th anniversary, um, the inquest said that the Mishcon note was important because it was the equivalent to somebody's premonition. He said Scotland Yard should have swiftly handed it over to the French crash investigators, where they received it from Lord Mishcon. They don't do that. They stick it in the safe. They don't reveal it, which was revealed in the programme. So, in what has been described as a raw, unflinching, and honest memoir, Harry seems certain to touch on questions relating to the murky circumstances surrounding his mother's death. He wouldn't have to be asking such painful questions if his mother's warning from beyond the grave had been heeded earlier by those in high places. And that is where the article finishes. So again, there are it's the article that's most raised my suspicions about whether or not something else happened on that night. There are a few details that I weren't aware of up until now contained within it, and I think it is rather telling that Prince Harry has actually been physically putting the feelers out to people involved, basically saying that he is dissatisfied with the answers given in the official inquest. So I'm not going to sit here and say one way or the other what happened. We have the official inquest. That is what is still going to be officially the record. So please let me know in the comment section below what you think about this. Do you think that Harry is going to put this exactly what Sue Reed said in the book? I think the timing is very conspicuous. That now Sue Reed is having this published as an article just before. Well, I think she's trying to beat Harry to the post, basically, because obviously, Harry's making millions off the back of his book. So, I think Sue Reed, perhaps wants to do the same. So, yeah, please let me know your thoughts and comments. I'm going to scoot all the way down. Um, Right, I'm just going to move on, I think, because there was the next part of. By the way, we will be covering other royals. The only reason why I'm mostly talking about Prince Harry over the last few days is because that hasn't been that much royal news. Many of the royals are still on their official break, their Christmas break, and won't be getting back into the swing of things at least until probably early next week. So there isn't a lot of other royal news to talk about. So we will be getting to other royals. But I thought this was also quite important because it's about Harry's claims in the trailers for his upcoming interviews, where he claimed that there was no willingness to repair relations. And that apparently is not true. So let's just read another article. So Prince Harry is wrong to claim that King Charles has shown no willingness to repair relations and his door has always been open, sources have said. The Duke of Sussex and said a potential reunion with his family in the UK did not seem on the cards, suggesting his father and brother were to blame for their continuing rift. He made the claim in a trailer for the interview with Tom Bradby. He also may say something similar when talking to Anderson Cooper. Part of the publicity blitz for his memoir Spare, which comes out, of course, next week. But now this is the important bit. So we all know that leaks have happened, and we know now that, sources close to the palace do actually mean that probably people working in the palace have spoken to the press. So this is as good as a direct response to Harry's claims as we are going to get. So those close to the king say he constantly reiterated how much he loves both of his sons and made it clear that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are welcome to meet him at any time. And of course, we do have a little bit of evidence of this because, of course, when he ascended to the throne, one of his first speech, he did he did speak fondly of Harry and Meghan. So we do actually have a piece of evidence supporting that claim. So speaking to the Daily Telegraph this time, they pointed out that the monarch has kept a line of communication with the Sussexes despite the many barbs they have targeted at the royal family. So basically, they are saying that Harry is lying. They say he saw tremendous flickers of hope in his interactions with the couple following the Queen's death. Speaking to another paper, another source said the latest claim by Harry was complete and unadulterated nonsense. They said it takes some audacity to say that when his father invited him to stay at his house when in the UK. So we now have sources saying that Harry was actually invited to stay with Charles um, over Christmas with the rest of the family and continued to make public statements of support. Of course, the public statement of support that I'm referring to is the one that he made when he first ascended to the throne. It was televised publicly all around the world. So here we have it. You know, sources, which I think we can pretty much now say are the palace, have said that Harry and Meghan, and of course the children Archie and Lilibet, were invited to Christmas this year with the royal family. And of course we know that they weren't there, so they must have refused. They also told the publication that the king had been saddened that he hasn't had the opportunity to spend time with his grandchildren. He has always left the door open for his son and will continue to do so. Representatives of Prince Harry have been contacted for comment, but I don't think there has been any reply because, of course, Prince Harry and Meghan famously revealed that they would not be talking or speaking to certain publications. Of course, I think this is one of them. There have been suggestions by some royal experts, though, that the already tense relationship between Harry and the rest of his family could become even more frayed upon the release of the memoir. Well, of course, depending upon what's in it, I definitely don't think that it's going to help Harry mend his fractured relationship with the rest of the royal family. He says he wants his brother back. He says he wants his father back. I'm not entirely sure that this is the right choice that he's made that's going to do that. Um, insiders are saying that it's doubtful whether William, the Prince of Wales, will ever reconcile um, because of what Harry is doing at the moment. Um, yeah, so we're going to have to wait and see exactly what is in the book, what will be revealed. But certainly, the palace is hitting back in its own way, saying that Prince Harry is not telling the truth. Um, Okay, I'm going to move on to the next story. Again, about Prince Harry. It's just a little bit of news that already Spare is number 2 on Amazon's bestseller list in America and the UK in pre-sales alone. And apparently there has been a huge operation to protect what's in the book. So it's open. The book is released all around the world on the same day. So um, to to stop any unnecessary leaks ahead of time, of course, Australia and that part of the world is ahead. So what they've actually done is embargoed the book in Australia and those countries until I think about 8 or 9 hours, so that pretty much everyone in the West is kind of getting the book released at the same time. Spare is currently on sale for $22.40 on Amazon in the US and half price at £14 on the UK site. Um, and I think pretty much most UK retailers are selling it on at the same price. So Monday, January the 9th, or when ebook copies of the book become available on Kindle as well. So there we go. Um, there you go. It's number two on pre-orders alone. Moving on to my final piece of royal news before I depart for today. We all know that Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus Benedict, of course, he isn't the, I suppose, current reigning Pope. He passed away, and his funeral is going to be held shortly. And apparently, no senior royal family members are expected to attend the funeral. I think, in part, this isn't anything to do with a snub. I think this is because they want to save the kind of world travel, if you like, for senior members of the royal family. I think until either it's King Charles slightly before the coronation or after the coronation, and I don't really think the Catholic Church, although of course King Charles, um, does respect all faiths, I don't think that's necessarily the right one for him to go to. So there is going to be a representative sent instead. It is a government minister. So no, there will be no royal family member at the Pope's funeral. Right, let me go through and read a few comments. D says William, in my opinion, is certainly not in fear of Meghan or anyone else. Um, I wouldn't have thought so. Uh, Leslie says, hello, hello. How about Harry and Meghan plans to have a big birthday party for Archie on the same day as the coronation? Yeah, there was a lot of stories about, uh, is the royal family, is King Charles being difficult by having the coronation day on the same day as Archie's birthday? Personally, I don't even think Archie came into it. I think it is a pure coincidence. And, even if, let's just think about it, right? How many people are share a birthday event with a coronation? I actually think, how cool would it be to have your birthday and also be at a coronation that of your grandfather? That would actually be a really cool thing. So I don't think it's a snub against Archie or anything of that nature. I'm sure that for one birthday, especially a young birthday, where he's probably not going to remember terribly too much about it in years to come anyway, but he will have memories, very vivid memories of a coronation. So yeah, I think it's just quite special to be having your birthday, so to speak, on a coronation day. I think it's actually quite a nice thing, not a snub at all. Um, there we go. And I am going to leave it here today. So if you have enjoyed today's chat, then please give it a big old. Oh, but I haven't. No, hang on a minute. I haven't told you my royal jewelry. I couldn't leave without showing you my royal jewelry. So today we have another royal family replica brooch. We have the wattle brooch. I'm hoping the yellow diamonds are showing up, but it's the Australian wattle. And the Queen, the late Queen, often wore this piece. It's really gorgeous. And the tiara I am wearing today, I chose to honour Diana. So this is, of course, the Cambridge Lovers Knot tiara, which wasn't actually Diana's. It was actually made for Queen Mary. But Diana famously wore it, and of course, Catherine now wears it as well for many state occasions. So there we have it with the delicate little pearls and of course the diamonds on top. I really do enjoy wearing this one. It is quite a nice one to wear. Um, Thank you. Lots of people saying that they love this tiara. And yes, I am wearing my blue velour jacket. I've had this years. I've had this many, many years, and I wear it often for my Christmas message. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, all the rest of it. It really does help the video get pushed out to more people. The more you comment, the more you like, the more you share around. So please share, feel free to do it. So from me, until next time, to you all, and goodbye.